How about we travel in time by doing some historical phonology? Isn't that fun? Like in linguistics, you can literally travel back in time when you go and study languages that used to be there, but they aren't anymore, or even your own language that used to be spoken differently. And today we will see examples of that because we covered the topic of epenthesis. We have done it in at least 2 videos. We have the word epenthesis. Although you can watch this video separately, but if you want to feel comfortable about the content, you need to watch 2 other videos: phonological processes, epenthesis or insertion, and the other one, which is a more recent video, is called Epenthesis in Brazilian Portuguese. And just as a quick review, the word epenthesis is made of epenthesis. Epi means in addition to, en is in, and thesis is put. So basically you put something in addition to what already exists. Is also referred to as insertion. And epenthesis is when nothing turns into something, which means where there is no sound, suddenly a sound appears. These are the examples that were presented in those videos from Brazilian Portuguese, in which you epenthesize the sound E. See, in the words on the left, I have put in square brackets sound E in the words from Brazilian Portuguese to show that the fact that they're in square brackets and now they're color-coded in red, it means they do not exist there in writing. For example, the word is captar becomes capitar. Although in spoken Brazilian Portuguese you would say capitar, that is not reflected in the writing system. It's not reflected in the orthography. This is what epenthesis is. But what I'm going to cover today is historical epenthesis. Historical. So in none of the above instances of epenthesis in Portuguese, in Brazilian Portuguese, are reflected in the orthography. However, if tomorrow you wake up and the speakers of Brazilian Portuguese start to write afita instead of afta, that is when this epenthesis becomes a historical change, or a completed change, or a completed historical change. This is not the case for the word afita in Portuguese, but I'm going to show you words from different languages in which this has been the case. We know that there's a group of languages called Romance languages, and that includes French, Spanish, Italian, Portuguese, among others. When Latin kind of gradually started dying, a new language, or actually in this case several languages, were born. And when you say new languages are born, by definition these languages are different from the dying language or the parent language. One way in which a new language is created is in having a lot of phonological changes in words. In other words, you start to pronounce words differently. The word spiritus, for example, in Latin, you have this consonant cluster. In French, you have an insertion in the beginning of the word. This is an E epenthesis or E epenthesis, if you pronounce it the French way, in the beginning of the word or word initially. This is a process of word initial epenthesis in French as compared to Latin. There is actually a technical term for this. It is called prothesis. Prothesis is when you put a sound in the beginning of a word. That is not limited to the word spiritus. For example, the word stella, in the sense of star. In French, you have prothesis again. You have étoile. So this vowel is inserted word initially. Now, going to Spanish, which is a sister language of French, also undergoes the process of prothesis, creating Spanish words out of Latin words. For example, the same word that was mentioned up there, spiritus, which is spirit, entering into Spanish becomes espíritu. Again, what do you have here? The added sound, which is added under the process of prothesis. There are other examples from Spanish. For example, the word escribir in Spanish comes from the Latin word scribere, in which there is no e in the beginning, but in Spanish there is the e. The word escuela in Spanish comes from the Latin word scola, and again, the Spanish word has undergone prothesis. What is this? These are examples of historical epenthesis. Historical epenthesis, and they are completed historical change. What is the difference between historical epenthesis and regular epenthesis? The difference is that in regular epenthesis, none of them are reflected in the orthography. But in historical epenthesis, the process has been completed and the epenthesis has entered the writing system. This is historical epenthesis. Here in French, you write the E. You write étoile with an E with an accent. In Spanish, you write escribir. You write escuela and you write espíritu. This has been a completed change. That's why I call it historical epenthesis. There are examples from other languages. For example, English, the word empty initially didn't have a P in the middle. A P was inserted in the middle of the word. It's a word medial epenthesis which has turned the word empty into empty. The word ganra became gander. Again, the word medial epenthesis of D. The same is true of thunder, which becomes thunder. Word medial epenthesis. Even in English, we have had word final epenthesis under a process under which the word sound or sun maybe became sound. So the D in sound didn't initially exist. It was epenthesized historically and entered the writing system. For example, the word in Persian, the word for brother is barodar, but initially the word was bradar. Here in Persian you have a word medial epenthesis of a that breaks the consonant cluster. So bra becomes bara, bradar becomes barodar. And the same applies to the word for column or pillar, which was originally stun. And nowadays the word is not pronounced stun, it's pronounced sotun. Again, a word medial epenthesis of a vowel. In this video, I've mentioned examples of epenthesis, word initially, word medially, and word finally, from different languages. Feel free to mention examples of completed historical epenthesis in your language in the comment section, or even from these languages if you have other examples. That would be very interesting. One of my favorite languages would be Arabic, and I know that I have a lot of Arabic viewers on this channel, so it would be interesting if you can mention examples of epenthesis in your national dialect, because I know Arabic has a lot of dialects in different countries. You can compare your national dialect to a standard Arabic. That would be something interesting. Or if you want to speak across time and historical epenthesis in Arabic, even in classical Arabic, that would be interesting as well.